Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John Dehlin. It is November 14th, 2017, and we are very excited to have with us today, returning to Mormon Stories, Sam Young, or as we're calling him in this episode, Bishop Sam Young. For those who don't remember, I interviewed Sam Young for episode 649 of Mormon Stories, so about a year ago, a little more than a year ago. And at the time, Bishop Sam Young, or former Mormon Bishop Sam Young, but in Mormonism, once you're a bishop, you're always a bishop. At the time, Sam was really interested in the law of common consent and speaking out about how we're not really making use of the law of common consent in the church, and that we need more people voicing their concerns with the church and its teachings, and even raising their hand in dissent during ward conference or state conference or even general conference. And Sam still believes passionately that if we're going to have a law of consent, it should mean something. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. So just a couple things. Sam and I go way back because my father and Sam were business partners in a business venture in Houston in the early 80s and mid 80s and maybe even early 90s. No. It would have been in the 80s. And that's where I got to know Sam as a true believing Mormon. Sam went on to become bishop in Sugar Land area and in Houston, near Houston. And but a couple years ago, Sam started learning things about his faith that were troubling. And so if you want to listen to Sam Young's interview to kind of get caught up to speed, you could do that on Mormon Stories Podcast. Again, it's episode 649. But what we're here to talk about today is a new initiative that Sam Young is pushing. Basically, Sam has been learning more and more about how bishops and branch presidents and sometimes stake presidents and mission presidents can have these one-on-one interviews with 12-year-olds, 12-year-old girls, 12-year-old boys, 16-year-old boys and girls, even 20 or 30-something-year-old men and women. And during these interviews, issues of masturbation, of pornography, of sexuality are brought up. And sometimes in these interviews, they can become very graphic, they can become very inappropriate, they can become very coercive, shaming, they can become very chaotic. Sometimes the interviews are handled well, sometimes they're handled disastrously, and sometimes really bad damage is done. And so what Sam has done is he's put together a petition that he's trying to get people to sign to try and encourage the LDS Church to end its practice of worthiness interviews, maybe generally, but more specifically, end its practice of having grown men, 40, 50-year-old men, sitting behind a closed door with a 12-year-old girl or boy, asking them if they masturbate, or even a 20 or 30 or 40-year-old woman asking her in what ways did she, break the law of chastity, in what graphic ways did she go too far with whoever her partner was at the time. So that is what today's interview is about. For those who've been following us, I think we've interviewed 9 different people who have been willing to share their stories of inappropriate experiences with their bishops or stake presidents or mission presidents. And those are going to be the first things that we release as a part of the series. But we just thought we would be remiss if we didn't give Sam Young a chance to catch us up on his life since his interview a little over a year ago, and then also to tell us a bit about where he is now in terms of church and his faith, and then finally to talk to us about, as a former bishop himself, what made him care so much about this issue that he's willing to really put his heart and efforts and money on the line to try and get this changed. So that's sort of the introduction. We've already got well over 60 people joined us live on Facebook. We're really excited. for everyone who's joined us, we want to encourage people to please ask questions, please post comments. That will make these interviews more interesting and also more interactive. And I'll make sure and share with Sam everything that people share in those interviews. So again, a welcome to everyone on Facebook Live who's joining us live, but also to everyone who's joining us asynchronously after this stuff has been recorded and posted to YouTube or wherever it gets posted. So without any further ado, Bishop Sam Young, welcome back to Mormon Stories Podcast.
So John, am I on video now?
You're on video and audio.
I'm on video, and I just heard you say Sam Young. Now, John, you must have forgotten what we talked about earlier. I wanted my
No, I haven't forgotten. This is your big...
out. I wanted my name blacked out. I wanted you to call me Bishop Fred. So my real name was Come on, John.
Sam, you're always a jokester. We can turn off your camera if we want to.
And call me Bishop Fred.
Bishop Fred, yes, and we can disguise your voice.
Now, I can certainly understand why people have wanted to have their faces blacked out and the names. It shouldn't be that way. We should be able to talk about this freely, but our culture doesn't permit it, and that's not good. I would like to say two things before John starts to ask questions. First of all, I would like to just issue a trigger warning. Some things could be said by me today or by John that could bring back to mind trauma that people have experienced in these interviews that we're talking about. I wasn't traumatized. I was never asked these questions as a kid, but I've come to know the trauma that many people have had. So I just want to tell you that I want to apologize if I trigger whatever that makes this trauma come back. But I hope that will be ameliorated by the fact that I'm calling out as wrong what has been happening in the church, that our interview practices are wrong and we're actively working to stop them. Several people have told me that have been harmed, that just hearing someone say it was wrong is part of their healing process. It was wrong, we're working to stop it, and hopefully that can help you understand if I do happen to step on one of those triggers. The second thing I want to say is I've got a dream. I have a great hope. I've got a dream that the crappy parts of our church, we can get rid of those things. The great things in the church, somebody else is going to talk about those. I want to focus on the crappy stuff that's going on. Let's get rid of those things. My dream is that we can actually, as a membership of the church, work to get rid of these things. John mentioned common consent. Jesus Christ, when we were baptized, empowered each one of us with a voice in his church. He said nothing is to be done without our consent, the common consent of the members. And I firmly believe that is what is going to save our church, is the wisdom, the understanding, the goodness that is vested in the general members of the church. I've got a dream. We're going to get rid of the crappy stuff. Okay, John, it's up to you now.
All right. Well, we can pretty much end the interview, right?
Yeah, okay. Well, no. You got to ask for signatures.
Oh, right. Yeah, sign the petition. There's a link on this YouTube, this Facebook post. But we're going to go back, Sam. We're going to go back and kind of get people caught up. So tell us really quickly where things have been since we interviewed you a little over a year ago. You sort of led this movement to have people, vote opposed in their ward or stake or even in general conference. How did that turn out? Honest assessment.
Well, it was an outstanding success of minor proportions. So there actually were people that voted opposed in their wards, in their stakes, and in general conference. However, it's a small number. I created the Common Consent Register, a record of those who opposed. There are 482 people that signed that, many of them with their name out in the open as opposed to hidden behind the anonymous button. There were very interesting things that came out of that. Many letters were sent to stake presidents and bishops relating what people were opposed to. But it's not big enough to really render the change in the church. But I voted opposed at every single, we met, I think last August of 2016, every stake, ward, and general conference I voted opposed in, culminating in last April. I and two other people that went with me voted opposed in the conference center, raised our hands, stood up and shouted opposed. Otherwise, nobody notices it.
Well, wait, real quick. So first of all, what's it like in your home stake where you had been bishop to vote opposed and just have everybody know, here goes Sam again. Bishop Sam is going to now be voting opposed. What was that like?
Well, first of all, not many people knew much about what I was doing back then. I had voted opposed in general conference with my wife sitting next to me, and she actually voted opposed with me, but it was just us two in our living room. I'd voted opposed in general conference in the stake center. There's only 14 people there. And though both of those happened before the ward and state conference. So the ward conference, well, members of my ward saw it. There was the stake presidency was there. They had seen it, but I'd already been talking to the stake presidency for 2 years at that point, or for a year at that point. That was rather nerve-wracking to vote opposed. The stake conference, again, the vast majority of the stake had no idea. I was sitting like 3 rows back from the front. Elder Snow, Stephen Snow, the 70, was sitting directly in front of me on the stand. My heart was thumping. I voted opposed, and the high counselor, or not high counselor, remember the stake presidency that was conducting the vote, looked over at me and said, your vote has been noted. And I appreciated that recognition. Afterwards, I went up and talked to Elder Snow and told him, I hope you noticed that I voted for you, but I voted opposed at 3 things, but the apostles and the first presidency, but the 70s, the ward, the stake, they really have no control of this. And I hope you noticed how I voted. He said, yes, I did. He asked me if I'd talked to the stake president. I said, yes, I have. He said, that's exactly the way it's supposed to work. He was very pleasant.
Nice. Okay. And then what was it like to actually vote opposed vocally at general conference? Was that crazy? Was it super scary? I mean, the pressure must have been intense, just the peer pressure, right?
Yeah, it was kind of intense, John. We got there an hour in advance of the meeting started or we're let in. So I'm sitting there hoping the hour goes by super slow. I wanted that to continue, but obviously time passes and the voting time came. And so it was a little bit nerve-wracking to stand up and shout that in conference. But once that was over, that, lasts about a minute to go through the 3 that I was opposing. And then I was able to sit back, calm down, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Did people give you dirty looks?
None.
No stink eye? No stink eye from anybody?
Well, you know what? I wasn't anxious to look anybody in the eye, and you got conference going on, and so nobody's really looking at you. A couple of little kids right in the row in front of me, they did look back at us, but they had no idea what was going on. I had a really nice conversation with the people standing right next to me or sitting next to me. And I had a nice conversation before the meeting started for that hour. And so we'd become friends. And so we had a little, if I was to do it again, I would notify everybody around me that I'm there voting for the church, not against it. I'm there not out of anger. I'm there out of love for what I'm doing. But I didn't have the courage to do that the first time.
And so are you going to keep voting opposed at any chance you get, or has that kind of run its course?
No, I will absolutely vote opposed because there are still crappy things in the church, John. There's some super crappy things. And we're going to be talking about one of those crappy things. There's no way I'm going to vote to sustain while this stuff is going on, while we are hurting our children.
All right. Well, really quickly. So I tried to drill down on your faith, your testimony last time we were together. In some ways you were kind of direct. In some ways, maybe you were a tiny bit circumspect. Talk just really briefly if and how your beliefs and your your behaviors have changed between last interview and this one. In what ways are you orthodox versus unorthodox and orthoprax versus unorthoprax now versus a little over a year ago?
Oh man, all those big words that I don't even know if I understand. So I'll just give you an answer. Uh, so
Beliefs.
I believe that I am now on a firm foundation. I always thought I was in a firm foundation, but then I found out a whole bunch of stuff. Felt like I'd been lied to. I'd been deceived. Stuff hadn't been told to me. My free agents had been stolen from me for 62 years of my life. And I tell you, it was a tough process over the gut wrenching anger, depression, sadness. And it's not a straight line. You go anger, sad, okay, anger, sad, anger, sad. I mean, it's just interesting how you keep finding stuff out, and it's not just the stuff you find out, but then the culture of our church. I never realized what the culture of the church, great people, but there's part of our culture, like people have to hide in order to talk about their masturbation interviews. What kind of a culture is that? We can't be honest about what's going on. So it was a gut-wrenching process to go through. It caused problems in my marriage. It caused problems in my relationships with my children. All that is pretty much mended at this point. I feel like I've got a closer relationship with my wife than I ever had in my life. I always thought it was good, but geez, you go through something like this and you come to realize, both of us, that our love is based not on a belief, not on the church, not on the prophet, not on any of that stuff. It's based on us, the love we hold for one another. But it took a while to get to that point. Divorce was discussed a few times. Every time it was, I had to tell myself that, look, my marriage is more important than any of this other crap. If I have to give everything up, I'm willing to do that. And I did for a period of time. My wife realized that. And anyway, it took a while to get to where we're at, but I think we're in a great place today.
Are you comfortable talking about what parts of the gospel you do versus don't believe? Do you mind sharing
I believe
that?
the central parts that everybody in the world believes, that every Christian believes, that I hope every Mormon believes. I embrace the teachings and example of Jesus Christ, to love your neighbor, to be the good Samaritan, to look for the least of these, the prodigal son. Those are the things that I embrace. The gospel of Jesus Christ, the teachings, and now more than ever, his example. He stood up he fed the hungry. He was looking for people that would feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and visit those in prison, those kind of things. So that's really my core belief, is what Jesus Christ taught.
What about, do you feel like it's important to mention what you no longer believe, the things that you reject? Not in terms of policies, but in terms of core Mormon doctrines or teachings. Or do you want to stay away from that?
I love Gina Colvin. As I'm working through this, she said, I don't give a crap about history. Maybe she didn't say crap. Maybe she said some other word that means the same thing. But it got me thinking that we got a lot of bad stuff in our history. If you look through it, honestly look through it, you'll see we got lots of bad stuff. Okay, I'm willing to say there's bad stuff there. I didn't know about it. My free agency is taken away. I've got my free agency back. But if we have something good today, I can look back in the back and learn from that, or say that's in the past, but what we do today has got to be good. And that's kind of where I'm at today. Yeah, there's bad stuff in our past. If the bad stuff is still with us today, no, I don't want it. I want to get rid of the crappy stuff. So I care about the history. I'm interested in the history. It's affected how I view the past. But the children of today are more important to me than what happened in the past.
Okay. And so a lot of the, let's just say, teachings that Joseph Smith would have taught that made us unique or made us special or made us uniquely true, it sounds like those things maybe are less important to you now.
Joseph Smith said some things that I love. He said some things I detest. He did some things I really like. he did some things I detest. So it's kind of a mixed bag. So I have a blog. I was never a writer. I'm still not a writer, but I've written a ton over the last year and a half.
Yes, you have.
I've got a blog that says I love Joseph Smith. And I quoted something that I've quoted, written about this quote 2 or 3 times because it is so good. So I'm going to take, everybody is a cafeteria something, a cafeteria Mormon, a cafeteria Christian. They take what they view as good. So I'm going to take what I view as good, and I'm going to throw out that which is bad.
What about behaviors? Is there anything you want to say about things you stopped doing that you used to do that you don't do anymore, that used to be important to you that now no longer are?
Well, last April, I quit going to church. Told the bishop and stake president I was stepping away from the church, not leaving the church, but stepping away because some things were said that were I came to some realizations that hit me in the gut. When I came home from an interview, I told my wife, something in my heart died on the bishop's desk.
What happened? What happened?
Well, so I've been talking to the bishop and stake president for 2 years about there are members that are leaving the church. There are members that are going through a lonely, gut-wrenching process. There's no place safe for them to share their journey, to discuss their journey, to discuss their doubts and questions. Can we provide a safe place for these good people that are sitting in the pews right next to us? I know people at the time, I knew people in the church that were struggling and hadn't left the church, but were trying to come to terms with things. The things I went through all by myself with that gut-wrench, lonely journey. And the time came finally when I was told that they weren't going to do anything outside the correlated programs of the church. Now, that basically is we're taking orders from Salt Lake City and we're not going to listen to what any member of the church wants or thinks. Or if somebody's suffering, that's tough luck. I mean, that's the way. It came across to me that the church has no interest in its members. The only interest they have is whatever the prophet and apostles decide, that goes down, nothing comes back up. I had never felt that before. I had felt that before, but I guess I was in denial, and that hit me in the stomach. And I went home and told my wife, I'm stepping away from the church. That is too hard for me to cope with. 6 months, last August, I decided I was going back to church. I was ready to go back to church for 3 reasons. Not because my beliefs had changed, but the reasons I was going back, I don't think we want to go through here. But the day I decided 2 messages came in. One from a member of the ward that wasn't very complimentary about me, and another one, you liar, you fraud. And I'm just looking at, this is where I'm going back to. The liar and fraud wasn't from a member of our ward. But I stepped back and just, and then I was going to go back 2 weeks later, and Hurricane Harvey hit. That put everything on hold for a period of time. I started going back to church last Sunday. But so I was out for about 7-8 months where I wasn't going to church. So that was the one behavior, I guess, that had changed. I also don't have a temple recommend, so I don't go to the temple. I turned that in a couple months after I talked to you because people were looking at me and saying, you should not even be a member of the church because you voted opposed. You shouldn't have a temple recommend. I'm looking, look, my issue is not the temple. My issue is the people that are struggling with doubts and questions and hurting. We need to reach out to them, give them a hug, let them know that they can talk about anything. If they leave the church, we love them no matter what. And so I figured if I get my temple recommend up, people won't be focused on that. They might list. It didn't do anything. They were never interested in members that were in pain and loneliness.
Got it.
So I don't have a temple recommend at this point, so I don't go to the temple.
Got it. Okay. Let's talk about really quickly your role as kind of gadfly, because especially on the Mormon Stories podcast community and on your blog, Invisible's Qubit, it seems like 1, 2, 3 posts a day. You're really tormented, or you're processing, or you're shaking things up. And you remind me a bit of Gina Colvin, and maybe other people are going to say that I share similarities, but it's just, there's another post of a criticism, there's another post of a problem, there's another post of a complaint. What's it like for you to sort of have this role of constantly calling out the problems in the church? Why do you do it? What keeps you going? What good do you think it's going to do to just sort of, some would say, be a dog barking at a train? What's the method to your madness, if you have any?
I probably have no method. I probably have a lot of madness. I'm making this up totally as I go along. Now, some people have said you only write negative stuff. Well, I got a couple responses to that. First of all, you haven't read my entire blog. There's a ton of positive stuff on there. I had an abscess, a tooth abscess, a couple months ago. I'd never had one before. It hurt like the dickens. I went to the dentist. He didn't look in my mouth and say, man, your tongue looks good. Your gums look good. Your cheeks look good. Oh man, look at all these other teeth. No cavities. No, he zeroed in on my abscess. Okay, he took the x-ray only of the abscess and went about the process of figuring out what we could do. I was not interested in anything. I wanted a treatment for the abscess. We've got an abscess in the church. We've got various abscess, but we got a gigantic abscess in these masturbation interviews. This is huge. So I'm willing to let anybody, there's tons of places you can find all the positive stuff about the church. Great, go there for that. I want to fix this abscess that we've got. So,
but it's not just this. There's a lot of things you've been struggling with over the past year, right? Treatment of LGBT brothers and sisters, treatment of women, the lack of transparency, financial transparency, right? Aren't those all?
My mother in the heart when I got married.
Yeah.
It was I, blithely unaware that my mother and father and my wife's mother and father and most of our siblings stood outside the temple. I didn't know the horrible hurt that was to my mother. Of course, I didn't know. The church had hidden from me. I had no idea that was totally unnecessary, that marriage is not a temple ordinance. You get married outside the temple, the sealing's the temple ordinance. But anyway, yes, I would like to speak out about that. But something happened earlier this year that really got me on this particular vein.
Well, first tell us how you dealt with masturbation and matters of sexuality as a bishop. Were you guilty now? Were you guilty then of the things you're kind of concerned about now, or not?
I think I count myself lucky. I think it was just serendipity that I was not in the position of doing the things that I think we should not be doing. So when I was growing up, I was never asked in an interview once about masturbation. Now, it was taught. You heard it. I remember sitting in the, I think I was in general conference when they had the little factory talk. So it was talked about. I grew up in the days that the miracle of forgiveness, that was the Bible for the kids. But no bishop ever, I didn't have to endure the shame of a bishop asking me that. I was asked once on my mission, and that was it. Never, ever after that. So when I became bishop, the thought never entered my mind, oh, here's a 12-year-old. Let me ask her if she masturbates. The thought never entered my mind. Why in the world would that enter anybody's mind to ask a child about that? So I never asked any kid about that. One child came in, 12 or 13-year-old came in and confessed it. And that was once. And I don't remember exactly what I said. I think I told him, that's okay. You've now confessed. Don't worry about it at this point. If he masturbated after that, well, I never heard about it. The statistics are that almost every boy masturbates. So I'm guessing that every kid, like in every award, was engaged in that practice. But so I never asked that when I was a bishop. I never received any training to do that. I would hope that I would have objected if I ever did, but I never did.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a really personal question.
Yikes.
And I think
Are
you
we,
blogged
are we going to
about
black
this.
things out now?
No. I think you can handle it. Did you masturbate as a bishop?
Well, I'd have to think about that for a little bit.
You don't have to
Okay.
answer that. It is
Let
a
me
bit.
say this, John. Let me say this. You've asked that question, and I've thought a lot about that question.
In other words,
That
it would be interesting to find out if bishops masturbated. You would think that they would, right? And
the answer to
so,
that is yes, because you asked me that question a year and a half ago, and I told you, well, I have no idea if they do. First of all, I think what the question you just asked is totally inappropriate. I'm not going to answer your question. It's
good,
inappropriate for you to
good,
ask anybody.
good. I'm glad.
Inappropriate for anybody to ask that question to an
Right.
adult or a youth. That is a
I love it.
private matter for someone.
I love it. Good answer.
Okay.
Good answer,
Now,
Sam.
but since you and I had that conversation, I've talked to bishops and high priest group leaders that have told me that they engage in that practice, that have told me they struggled with pornography. So,
As bishops, right?
as bishops, yes.
Yeah.
Now, so it's only bishops and high priest group leaders that I had a sit-down conversation with. But you know what, John? I don't believe that has anything to do with the issue I'm concerned about. They're adults. They are people. But I really don't care what their personal life is. My concern is for those children that we are damaging. That's where I'd like our interview really to be.
Okay. All right. We're there. So tell us how you got interested in this issue. Thanks for getting our listeners up to speed on your life. People care about you, Sam. So I just wanted to take that time. But now let's jump in. How did you start getting into this issue as the latest one you wanted to really focus on?
So as I'm going through this faith transition, I start to hear a few things about kids being held back from going on a mission because of masturbation. One kid, grandson of one of my good friends, he had to wait a year and then finally gave up. And I can tell you, most kids are going to lie about that rather than talk about that. But he was held back. So I'm starting. It's in the back of my mind. It hasn't really engaged my mind that this could be a regular practice. If I thought through it, I'd be saying, yeah, that's a problem. It wasn't until I stepped away from the church and I met with I told that to a fellow that my home taught. And he said, Sam, why don't you come over? I think it's time that I tell you why I stopped going to church. So I went over there. We went out and sat on his deck outside, and he started to tell me a story. He said that now he has not been active since the day I was assigned to home teaching him, which was many years ago. And he had told me various reasons why he wasn't going. But this time he said, Sam, I think you're ready to hear the real reason I didn't go back to church, or I left the church, or stopped going. He's not left the church. He's still a believing member. He said that he went back to church. He and his wife made the decision that they wanted to raise their young boys, who are now teenagers, in the youth programs. So they went to church, and one day one of his sons, who has a little bit of a mental disability. I mean, it's minor enough that most people wouldn't know that, but it affected some of his behaviors. Anyway, one day his son came to him and said, Dad, the bishop wants to talk to me. I'm nervous about that. His dad said, I will go sit on the couch outside. It'll be perfectly fine. If you're nervous about it, you just open the door and come out and see me. A few minutes later, very quickly, the door opened. His son came rushing out, white as a sheet, and said this, Dad, the bishop just asked me if I masturbate and if I have sex with boys. Now, this man, he's the kind of dad I wish I had been. He is the kind of dad that today I want to be to my grandchildren and to the children and grandchildren of those 2,000 people that have signed the petition already. He was in Vietnam. He served behind the lines, ununiformed, highly dangerous, in the jungles of Laos and Cambodia. He came home and became a police officer. If you picture a macho man, you're not thinking about me. But if you picture a macho man, this is about as macho as you can get. His son comes out and tells him that. He walks in that bishop's office, leans over the desk and says, "If you ever ask my sons a question like that again, I will beat you to a pulp." That struck to my heart, what he was willing to stand up to. Now, John, he made that statement to the bishop. "You ask my son that again, I'm going to beat you to the pulp." I believe we need to beat this practice to a pulp. It needs to be excised from our church. Okay, so I didn't know how common this was, so I posted on Facebook. Hey, has anybody been asked about? Suddenly, it was a massive landslide of how many people shared their stories. Suddenly, it is becoming obvious that this is happening all over the place, not just 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 10 years ago or 5, but right now, this is happening in our church. So then I find something out that really makes me realize what a crappy dad I was. I asked my daughter, who was living with me at the time. She said, I asked, were you asked about masturbation? And she said, "Yeah, I was. This is like age 12. And I didn't know what it was, Dad. So I asked my friends. They didn't know what it was. So I went home and looked it up. I Googled masturbation. I challenge anybody here that likes our policy to ask kids. I challenge you. You go look up that word and look at the images. That's what my daughter was sent to from the bishop's office. That's okay. I want to forgive, but I want to be angry that this has happened to my own child behind my back as I'm giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to the church, tens of thousands of hours in service to the church. I was about as dedicated as you can get, and they're taking my daughter behind a closed door, all alone, with an older man that's totally untrained in all the consequences that happen without my knowledge and certainly without my consent. No, that is wrong and needs to be stopped. So right there.
How did you feel when you knew that had happened to your own daughter and you didn't even know it?
Well, I was angry. I was super angry. I talked to my wife about it. Well, then now she's got the guilt of that we weren't close enough to our kids for her to have come out of that meeting and said, "Hey, they asked me about this." But most kids are not going to do that. They don't know what it is, or they are too ashamed. Anyway, so yeah, I was angry, and that spurred me to the action that I'm on today.
Okay. And so there's lots of different ways that you could go about trying to solve this problem. What made you decide to go the petition route?
Because I tried everything else.
What'd you try?
Well, I talked to the bishop and the stake president over the course of 2 years.
What happened?
This was
What'd they say?
I wasn't as passionate back then as I am now, but it just didn't seem to be a big concern. But my other concerns were totally put aside. And then I voted opposed. And as I voted opposed, I've put this on my list. When I send my list to the stake president and bishop, here's what I've opposed. That is right there. Our interview practices with children. Then I started writing about it. Now the writing has done a lot of good. Now, John, I've got a dinky group of people that know who I am, but even amongst that small group, it has done wonders for them to see that there is somebody speaking up for them. So anyway, then I did all the writing, and finally looking at still nothing's happening. Fine, I'm going to start up a petition to raise awareness The church might even do something, but it raises awareness amongst the community that this is going on and that you can stand up and say, I don't want my child interviewed alone and never about sexual issues. So there are about 2,200 people that have signed that thing. Thank you, everybody that is standing up for our children. John, you told me, asked me what my goal is, and I said 10,000. And you said, oh boy, that's going to be a hard task.
But you're 20% of the way there.
We're 22% of the way there. Next step, I'm going to Salt Lake City. My mom, my 87-year-old mom and I, we're going to Temple Square. We're going to, well, close to Temple Square. We're going to be on the sidewalk outside of Temple Square to raise awareness, to let people know about the petition.
Now, what dates? Do you know the dates and times so that people can come by and salute you and stand with you? What?
I don't want you to salute me, but
stand with you, honk.
Yeah, great. Yes, help the awareness of the petition and encouraging people to sign the petition. Here's something else. You do work with Natasha Helfer Parker. She said this at a retreat not long ago. She said that part of the healing process is being able to share your stories in a safe place. That petition, you'll find many stories on that petition in the comments where people shared their stories. That alone has helped the process, help them process through the trauma that they've gone through, being able to tell their stories just in snippets there. Okay, so December 1st, December 2nd, I don't know what hours we're going to be there, but I'm planning on being there like at 9 o'clock until 8 o'clock at night. My mom probably will not last quite that long.
I don't know. She's a pretty feisty, strong woman.
Yes, that's right. Somebody said, Sam, it might be a little dangerous out there, but don't worry. Your Mama Bear is going to be there.
What if it's super cold? What if it's snowing?
Hey, it'll just feel like Christmas. I'm gathering signatures so that the Christmases of the children in our church will be not filled with the trauma that we fill them with today.
Will you be holding big signs? We have banners. We have anything like that? Or will you just look like two random people on the curb?
Random people.
You're not going to hold a sign?
Well, I'm not planning on holding a sign up, but we will have signs that will be maybe a little bit over waist high, that people can see what we're doing, and maybe we'll put that to a stick. But we're going to have signs so people can see what we're talking about. I'm going to have copies of the petition that we can hand out, little cards that have the links to the petition. And
do you want others to stand with you? Are you inviting people to come stand with you for this show of concern?
I have not invited anybody, but if anybody comes, they are welcome. We'd be delighted to have you. Here's the way it works in Salt Lake City with regards to things like this. You don't have to have a permit unless you have more than 50 people. Well, I've got a permit, but still, we told them there wouldn't be more than 50 people. I don't think we'll have 50 people if we have 3 people.
Where will you be? Do you know which corner, which side of Temple Square? Will you be at Pioneer Park? Where will you be?
We are going to be on South Temple. And hey, John, I'm making this up as I go.
Is that kind of between the mall and the church in Temple Square, basically? Is that what South Temple is?
So okay. Right now, the plan is to be at South Temple and West Temple, although we have put that we could be anywhere on South Temple between Main Street and West Temple. But the intent right now is West Temple and South Temple. But if there are more people someplace else, we might go across the street near the entrance to City Creek Mall. I'm just not familiar with the traffic patterns for pedestrians. So we'll want to locate where we have the opportunity to talk to people.
So this is a Friday and a Saturday, right?
Correct. Uh-huh.
Okay. And what do you think is going to come from the petition or from you standing on the curb at Temple Square? Why are you doing this? What practical result do you think is going to come from it?
It's already come, John. I just want more of it.
Okay.
I want more of the practical results that have happened. You had mentioned on one of these other interviews that the petition, who knows what the petition can do. I know what the petition not only can do, but has. The petition has already manifested a wonderful work. And I'm going to tell you some things that petition has accomplished. But I'd like it to accomplish it many-fold more. The ultimate would be the church would listen and listen to its membership.
What do you want the church to stop and start doing?
Okay, well, here's the petition. This is what we're asking, calling on the church to do. We call on the LDS Church to immediately cease the practice of subjecting children to questions about masturbation, orgasm, ejaculation, sexual positions, or anything else of a sexual nature. This applies to all children up to and including age 17. Now, I mentioned the orgasm and the other words there. That is not common, but I've got story after story where that was discussed. That should never be discussed. What the hell?
No, we have bishops asking about, sexual positions, the extent of penetration, whether or not orgasm happened multiple times.
Oral sex, anal sex. What the hell
oral,
are we talking
anal,
about that?
Yeah, was there oral? Was there anal? Right? Was it hardcore porn? Was it softcore porn?
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's number one.
Okay.
Get rid of those. Any questions with our children?
Aren't those inappropriate to adults? Not only children, but adults too. Like, let's say that there's a couple. Let's say that there's a single 30-year-old, or even a separated couple in their 40s, and maybe they had a relationship. Are those questions fair game for adults in your mind?
John, I want to remain focused on the kids.
Okay,
the
all right.
Another issue, but what we're doing, we're grooming kids to be susceptible to those questions and accept those questions when they're adults. We're grooming our kids to be susceptible to those questions when they're kids by other adults in power that happen to be pedophiles, and that has happened to our children. Anyway, so the adults, that's a whole nother issue. I want to focus on the kids. So that's number one. We call on the LDS Church to publicly disavow this practice, not in private, not on some leaked memo, but out in public, that look, we're not doing, these things are out of bounds for our bishops. We call on the LDS Church to ensure that all congregational leaders, as well as general membership, are informed that this practice is prohibited. The congregational leaders, the general membership, we have no idea what the policies of the church are. Actually, I do. It is, anything's fair game, bishops. They don't say that, but that's basically what the manuals allow, because they don't address this. They address a bunch of stuff, but they don't do the boundaries. And so the members are not aware what they are. So those are the three things we're asking. The petition, the 2,200, soon to be 10,000 of us are asking for.
Yeah, if everybody listening to this podcast signs the petition, we'll have 10,000. Okay. It's as simple as that, because this podcast is downloaded well over 20,000 times per episode on average.
So let me just say this.
Can people sign it anonymously if they don't want to actually put their real name?
No, I want the real name.
Okay.
But here's what you can do. There is a check, because it's not safe for everybody to do this. Hell, what's wrong with our culture? It's not safe to say, I don't want my children asked about sexual things. Okay. It's not for some people. There's a checkbox that says display your name publicly. It's already checked. If you uncheck that box, your name will show up as anonymous. About 40% of the signatures on there that show up as anonymous. But behind that anonymous thing, on my side, there's a name, there's an email address. So no, we want this to be a real legitimate petition. And some people have signed on there with that. It's obvious that they're making fun of it, and so I've deleted some things. But yes, your name can show, you can protect your identity.
Will you be releasing people's names?
I will release nobody's. First of all, everybody's names that is not anonymous is already released. You can go to the petition, click on signatures, and it all comes up. The signatures, the city, the state, the comment, and those comments are really interesting. But the ones that are anonymous, I will not release anybody's names unless I have their permission.
Joyce is asking, she's not a member any longer. Can she still sign it?
Joyce. You're making me cry here, Joyce. You're no longer a member of the church. Who is concerned about our children? Whether you're a member or a resigned member, we're all concerned about our children. We should be concerned about our children. If you've never been a member of the church, you should be concerned about our children. Joyce, you may have friends that have children that desperately need to be protected. You may have children that have children. You may have neighbors that have children. There are 2,200 people that have signed that petition that have children, nieces and nephews, grandchildren that want to be protected. So yes, anybody can sign the petition.
All right. If somebody were to say to you, Sam, listen, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Yeah, it's a bit of an awkward question. And yeah, you know, kids are kind of, maybe they'll lie or maybe they'll just feel a little bit of guilt. But in the end, this is God's way and you're making a big deal out of nothing. And it doesn't even happen all the time. What would you say to someone who tried to tell you that you're making a big deal out of something that's not a big deal?
Well, first of all, I've had people tell me that.
Okay. What do you say?
My children are a big deal to me. I don't care if it's never happened to anybody else. It's happened to my kids. My grandkids are coming up. They are going to be in the crosshairs of this practice. Now, these interviews don't have a super negative effect on everybody. There's a range from it doesn't have any effect to I'm going to lie and it doesn't have any effect, all the way to suicide.
Yeah, I just want to say that Vicky just wrote, my stepson ended his life because of this.
So I'm going to sit on the sidewalk in the shadow of Goliath, hoping that there will be who said that?
Vicky.
Hoping there will be not another Vicky that has a child, that has someone in their family that commits suicide. That is happening. It's documented out there that kids have committed suicide over this very issue. There's tons of people that attempted suicide. I do these talkerias, and I was out of town and did a talkeria out of town, and a lady came and she said, earlier today I went to the airport with a friend of mine. My friend asked me to go. She needed company because they were going to pick up her son from the airport. He had been sent home from his mission. He had attempted suicide on more than one occasion. This time, it was almost successful. He was sent home because he couldn't deal with the shame that is associated with all of these interviews. So, attempted suicide, thinking of suicide. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say they had thought about suicide over these issues. Anyway, so I'm making a big deal out of kids I'm making a big deal out of the least that Jesus Christ himself said we should look after. There's a lot of people that are not going to be affected. I'm not concerned about the most. I'm concerned about the people in the bad position, the marginalized, those on the margins, the ones that are vulnerable.
Right.
So that's the way I'd respond.
Vicky, I'm going to read some comments now, Sam, if that's okay. Vicky says that her stepson was 15 when it happened, and that's. Oh, damn it. I do want to agree that I was a therapist at Utah State University Counseling Center for 4 or 5 years, and there have been many, many, many Mormon youth, returned missionaries, men and women that have been driven to the point of either contemplating, attempting, or completing suicide over sexual guilt and shame. So that's my little added testimony. I have to give a shout out to our dear, lovely friend, Lynn Moore. Lynn Moore is tuning in. We love the Moore family. Lynn writes, I have regrets as a mother. I didn't know what was going on in my kids' interviews. Shout out to her son, Jason, my buddy, and to all the wonderful Moores, to Bill. We love you guys. Hope you're doing well. Anything you want to say to Lynn and Bill and the Moore family?
So my transition was painful. It was lonely. But both the pain and loneliness were tamped down frequently by Bill and Lynn. I called them many times as I drove home from church. So anyway, I really appreciate those good friends of mine.
They're good people. Love to the Moores. Okay, other comments really quickly. Let's see. Vicky says she signed it. Evan says he signed it. Lots of people are signing it. Okay, Tui writes, love you, Sam. This is a worthwhile effort. I supported and signed it. Joyce writes, my grandchildren matter to me. Jana writes, I'll come and stand with Birdie in December. So Jana wants to actually, she doesn't want to stand with you. She wants to stand with Birdie. That's your mom, right?
I'm totally good with that.
Lots of people aren't. Evan writes, thanks for all your hard work. June asks, I'm in Australia. Can I sign it? What's the answer to June? I think I know the answer.
Everybody in the world should be loving our children and standing up for their protection.
Becky says,
yes, of course, June.
Becky says, I'm proud to show my name on the petition. Thank you for taking the reins in this issue. Lives have been destroyed by those awful interviews.
John, can I just say one thing here?
Yeah, please.
About the anonymous, I've asked people to sign it. I've asked people to share it. Some people have to be anonymous. There should be no shame associated with that's brave just to put your name on there. If you can't sign it even anonymous, I get that. Don't feel bad about that. If you can't share the petition, that's okay too. There should be no shame in any of that. I understand our culture.
Derek writes, my father was my bishop and stake president for 15 years. I had the unique burden of having these conversations with my own father and having to live with the shame of my confessions each time I looked at him at home outside of his office at the church. Our hearts go out to you, Derek. That would be a tormenting existence. Let's see. Huntley says she and her husband just signed. Ryan McKnight, the brave Ryan McKnight of Wiki Mormon Leaks, writes, Sam Young is one of the best human beings I've ever met in person. So shout out to Ryan McKnight.
So Ryan, I've got to let everybody know. So I don't drink alcohol at this point. I still live the Mormon standards. And but Ryan took me out, asked me if I'd like to go out for a drink. And I said, sure. He took me to Sherwin-Williams. Boy, talk about somebody that wants to protect my standards. You can't buy any drinks at Sherwin-Williams. So thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, shout out to Ryan. Yeah, lots of people are signing it. Sarah, Eric, Jennifer. I think you're going to get at least a couple hundred signatures just from this live interview. Okay, so Kaylee writes, I don't believe this in the slightest, but I can see Orthodox members arguing that it's the sin causing the negative outcomes, the shame, the suicides, the attempted suicide, and not the interview. How would you respond to the argument that if people are feeling shame, it's because they're doing wrong, not because they shouldn't be asked these questions?
Absolutely, they're going to feel it's wrong. So regardless of whether you feel it's, they all feel it's wrong. Okay, now that would be a whole different interview, John, to talk about whether masturbation is a sin. I wrote an article about that called Bippity Bop, that about how I feel whether or not it's a sin. But that's not the issue here. Whether or not you feel it's a sin, sitting there with a bishop, with a man in authority, asking probing questions, it automatically puts shame on that person. And then you compound that fact with almost all the boys masturbate. well, suddenly you're putting shame on almost everybody. So it doesn't matter whether it's a sin or not. That should not come into the bishop's office. He is not trained to deal with that. Anyway.
All right. Now, how many interviews, how many signatures did we have at the beginning of this interview, Sam? Do you remember?
I do. 22, 23.
All right. So far, we've got 2262. So that's a little bit better.
Okay. Super.
Not
Outstanding.
quite where we need to be. All right. So, Sam, what else do you want to share? Oh, wait. So Dan writes, as a psychiatrist, I'm very concerned with fostering sex positivity and reducing shame and stigma surrounding this fundamental aspect of our humanity. Margot writes, my hope is that this moment in the national conversation will shine an extra spotlight, making it harder for leaders and members to tell themselves that this is okay. Melvin writes, signed it, these practices must stop. Thank you for your important work. Sherry writes, Elizabeth Smart has said we cannot teach our children that death is better than sexual sin, which has also caused suicide. She is amazing. Maybe one of you could talk to her. I would love to interview Elizabeth Smart. If somebody could help me get in touch with her, I welcome that. Jennifer writes, Sam is a wonderful man. I've watched him evolve. It's hard to watch sometimes, but I adore him. His heart is so genuine. I was asked this when I was 12. It's real. So Jennifer says it's real, Sam. What do you say to Jennifer?
Thank you for that little bit of validation. It's absolutely real, and I feel for you, my friend.
All right, Sam. So what are you going to do if the church just gets sick of your complaining and decides to take action for this or for other things? Are you prepared to lose your membership if it comes to that? Are you gunning for it? Some people like to accuse me of explicitly gunning for excommunication. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm absolutely not gunning for excommunication. I've been told many times that what I'm doing, that I should be excommunicated. And I've been hearing that for 3 years. It has intensified over the last month with regards to this. Now, I don't want to leave the church, but I feel like if I can save one child by being excommunicated, I'm good with that. If I can do good for many people, I'm good with that. Maybe a year ago, when my wife and I still had some issues we were working through, somebody said, you're going to be excommunicated. I asked my wife, what would you think about that? And she said this, if you were excommunicated, the church would be wrong and you'd walk away with your integrity. This last Sunday, she told me that she fully supports what I'm doing and the church has no business. There's nothing I'm doing that would merit excommunication. I still don't see what the hell I'm doing that would merit excommunication. But if that's the case, fine. I've stood up for what I believe is a horrible practice that we need to get rid of.
Have any leaders asked you to be silent and to stop speaking out?
Nope. I don't really hear from anybody. I sent tons of emails, but I don't hear anything. I met with my bishop this last Sunday to talk about some things. Well, actually, to talk about this. But you know, he didn't ask me to be silent. Nobody's told me to quit doing what I'm doing.
Why don't you organize a massive march or protest where you call on hundreds or thousands of people to come support you and get media coverage so that you can actually, get this covered in the Salt Lake Tribune, Deseret News, Associated Press, maybe even Wall Street Journal?
Why don't I do that? Because I'm making it up as I go, John. It was an easy thing for me actually it wasn't an easy thing to create this petition. I've been writing my heart out. That takes a ton of time. Every time I write an article, which is now every couple of days, I get 200 signatures. I've only got 80 articles left to write to get to 10,000 signatures. But it's been as I go along, what next could bring attention, awareness to what we're doing. So who knows, that might be something in the future. Right now, it's just me and my mom and Jana and whoever else might show up.
I'm going to try and show up on Friday. I'm going to try and show up on the 1st. Yeah, and I think you ought to consider inviting people to come stand with you, to bring signs, and to try and make it something that the press gets aware of. So that's just my little suggestion. You can take it or leave it.
So there are people that have come forward and said, Sam, this needs media attention. Until this week, I was saying that's not the direction I want to go. But after this week, just some things this week, I'm saying no. Next week, there will be hundreds of children behind closed doors being asked these questions. No, so whoever was asking me, I said, yes, go for it. But I don't know how to do that, but hopefully these guys know how to do it. So there may be media attention on the 1st and 2nd. I don't know. I've sent an email I've got 2 contacts in the high echelons. I've sent an email saying what I'm doing. And so somebody might be aware of it. But whatever it is, Mom and I will be in the shadow of Goliath.
All right. So we're at 2273 signatures. I'm going to ask 27 of my listeners to sign this signature before Sam and I hang up. So now we're down to 26. So I'm not going to hang up with Sam Young until 26 more of my listeners sign, and we get up to 2,300. How does that sound, Sam?
Well, let's see. We might lose a lot of listeners going on.
Let me read a couple more comments. So Megan says she signed. Thank you. Suzanne said she's signing. Angie says signed and grateful. Thanks for all you're doing. Amanda writes, here's the thing. If any human is excommunicated for defending our children's dignity and decency, then that is a telltale sign of something far worse going on in the church, which is more and more evident every day. So Amanda's saying, bring on the excommunication if the church wants to show its cards as not being of Christ's church. Beverly's asking if you have to be LDS. Beverly, what's your answer to Beverly?
Beverly, if you care about your neighbor's children, if you care about any children, help us get rid of this policy. Yes, your signature is totally welcome, my human being friend that are concerned about our children.
Philip writes, it's a chicken or the egg situation as far as where the guilt comes from. Do kids feel guilty because it's wrong or because they have been taught it is wrong? I grew up outside of Utah and none of my friends were Mormon and they were not saddled with guilt. The LDS establishment functions on guilt, which is why these interviews are practiced. Philip says he signed. Joshua's asking, what's up with the life preserver? Did I jump ship? So Philip's making fun of this beautiful orange vest that my sweet wife Margie bought me. Margie wants me to be a little bit more stylish, Philip or Joshua. That's why I'm wearing my orange vest. So don't you dare offend Margie. Mary says she's signed. She's number 2277. Amy writes, it's heartbreaking that people are scarred for life over these kinds of interviews. Mental health is hurt at such young ages. Signed and supported. Thank you for what you were doing. Beverly writes, since I came late, can someone direct me to where to sign? Yes, Beverly, I just pasted the link again in the link. Carrie says she's up to 2278. So we're getting there, Sam. We're almost there. Now we're at 2283. 17 more people need to sign this survey before we hang up.
Be merciful to everybody.
All right. So Sam, give us some closing thoughts as our final 17 people reach out and sign that survey. Let me ask you this, Sam. Is the church true? Yes or no?
I don't even know what you mean by that. For years, see,
is this God's one true church on the earth?
And I've never known what that meant. No, I've asked that question for many years. What does it mean, the only true and living church? What does that mean? Does that mean everything else is false? I've never gotten anybody to answer that. So I put that statement aside and say that's a meaningless statement to me, that this is the only true church. It's a meaningless statement to say this is the true church because there are so many things that are not true that we have now admitted are not true. So I don't, those are not meaningful statements to me.
Okay, that sounds like you dodged the answer.
Well, it's not if you ask me a question that makes no sense, I'm going to tell you it makes no sense to me.
Okay.
Is the Book of Mormon, is the Book of Mormon,
is the Book of Mormon a historical record of ancient Americans?
Now that one I will openly answer to you, because it's a straightforward. It's not, is the Book of Mormon true? Well, what the hell does that mean? Is it true? The Book of Mormon, to me, is not historical. I told the stake president that 2 years ago, as we were discussing trying to help people, but I was totally open with him. No, I believe there's ample evidence that the Book of Mormon is not historical. Now, if somebody believes it's historical, I'm not going to, I don't want to convince anybody of my point of view, but that's my point of view. Now, is the Book of Mormon valuable? There's things I love about the Book of Mormon. There's things I love about the story of Pinocchio. It doesn't have to be historical.
But that does not make Joseph Smith a fraud?
No.
Why not? That means he kind of lied and told people.
John.
What?
Now we're getting off of what I am focused on.
I'm just trying to delay to get 9 more people to sign the dang survey, Sam.
Okay, so let me just read something. A friend of mine sent me this statement the other day. The only hope we have of changing this intrusive, devastating behavior is for the thunder of angry voices calling leaders to account. My voice is thundering to bring the leaders to account. 2,283 are thundering voices. We need thundering voices so that somebody will listen to protect our children. Members are listening and starting to protect their children, but we need the change from the top. Thundering voices. Angry. I'm angry about this.
All right. We've got 7 more to go to reach 2,300. 7 more signatures. Somebody said this sounds like a PBS fundraiser.
Yeah, telethon.
Like a telethon. All right, Sam, a couple more questions. Do you think Thomas S. Monson is God's one true prophet on the earth? Is that another meaningless question for you?
I recognize Thomas Monson is the president of the church. I don't believe that he always, I don't know if he speaks for God or not. I don't know if God tells him what to speak, but I recognize him as the president of the church. I recognize the apostles. Do they talk with God? I have no idea. What I know is apostles and prophets have made lots of mistakes. We have now gone back, the current apostles, and say, we condemn and disavow what our predecessors taught and practiced. Well, okay. I love that. I love that they did that. Did they get that from God? I don't know if they got it from God or not, but I sure like it that they're saying we condemn what we did in the past, our past racism. But I do not have a way to tell if they got something from God. So I'm going to use my own brain as God told us to, with common consent, and figure out, do I support that or not? Am I willing to accept that or not? And then vote opposed or for. I don't accept, they never put up.
Keep going. We're at 22.99. I just wanted to show the 2,300. So keep talking.
I see. Look at that. So we never put up for.
One more to go.
If masturbation is a sin. 100 years ago, it wasn't a sin. They weren't asking about this. There was no preaching about masturbation. For 6,000 years, there wasn't. Why don't they put that up for common consent? We've now received a revelation, just like we did with coffee. We received a revelation, and coffee is now not just a suggestion, it's now a commandment. They put that up for vote. We voted for it. Put masturbation up. They never put up these youth interviews. They should put that up for a vote, that it's proposed that we take all of your children individually behind closed doors by an older man, all alone, without your knowledge and consent, and ask them if they masturbate. Put that one up for a vote. Live by our common consent. I tell you, I'm voting against that, and I'm voting a big time, and almost 2,300 are now voting together against that.
We have literally been stuck at 22.99 for the past minute or two. We need one more signature to be able to end this tediously long
Yes.
interview. Somebody go sign the petition so Sam and I can go have dinner.
There it is. There it is done.
There
There
it
it is
is.
done.
Let's show it. Can people see it? Can you see it?
Well, I can see it.
2,300.
Okay,
More-
2,300. Outstanding. We only have 7,700 to go to get 10,000. So thanks for everybody who signed that
Yeah,
thing.
that's
Thanks
awesome.
for standing up for our children.
That's awesome. All right, Sam. You've said a lot. Thanks to all the listeners who have stayed with us. Sam, what do you want to say in closing that you haven't already said? I have a question. Why does this matter? Why not just move on? Why not go join another church or just quit religion altogether? Some say you can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone. Why are you still annoying and bugging the church? Why don't you just move on and let those who enjoy it? And, you know, you're clearly not enjoying it, so move on.
I'm enjoying it. I enjoy what I do. I like what I do.
You enjoy being a gadfly.
No. I enjoy following my heart, doing what I believe is right. Last Sunday in church, the primary program they sung, choose the right and do what is right. Do as you're right. Let the consequence follow. Be faithful and fearless in choosing the right. That's what I'm trying to do, John. Now, I could leave the church. I could shut my trap up. I could cut off my hand and write not another single thing. But you know what? What would that do for my grandchildren? Somebody sent me this. We all place ourselves in danger to one degree or another when we stand up. Yeah, I'm putting myself in danger for all kinds of criticism and excommunication or whatever. But we place our children and our grandchildren in even greater danger when we don't. I'm not willing to put my children and grandchildren in the danger that I know is out there. So there's my answer. Why don't I just shut up?
All right, Sam Young, we have reached the end of this Mormon Stories interview. We're well over the goal we set for ourselves. We're at 23. We're at 2308 and climbing. Let's get this to 10,000 by December 2nd. Is that an okay goal?
Hey, that's a great goal.
All right, let's try and make it happen. All right, Sam Young, how do people keep following what you're doing? If you guys end up doing a march or a protest or even a media campaign, how do people keep following you?
First of all, I've never even thought of any of that stuff until you mentioned it right here. The furthest thing out in my plans is Mom and I in the shadow of Goliath. But to keep up, well, my Facebook page, that's totally open, and I post tons of stuff there that gets me in lots of trouble. And I also have a blog called To Cubit is Invisible's Cubit. We won't talk about where that came from, but to find my blog, you Google search Invisible Cubit, and it comes right up. By the way, the petition, if you don't have a link to the petition, we now have a really good link. It's called protectldschildren.org. protectldschildren.org, and that immediately brings up the petition.
I love that. protectldschildren.org. That's way better, Sam.
Yeah.
That's way easier than that big old long thing that
Yeah.
you gave us before.
Well, somebody made that suggestion a week ago.
I love it. And it looks like the petition tells us who was number 2300. It looks like it was Dean Martindale. Do you see that? Dean Martindale was 2300. But every signature is important. Every signature matters. So thanks to everyone who signed and to everyone who's going to encourage others to sign. Hey, can I be honest about something, Sam?
No, tell me a lie, please. I like those better.
Sam, I haven't signed your petition yet.
Well, what the heck is going on with that, John?
I've been so busy promoting it that I haven't actually signed it.
John,
there we go.
That's good. That's good. You might want to be the number 10,000. Wait for it to get 9999.
No, I'm not gonna. That'd make me a hypocrite. So I'm just doing it now. I'm in Salt Lake City, and I'm signing it, Sam. You're just gonna have to deal with it. Love you,
Okay.
Sam Young. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and sign it publicly. Woohoo!
All
I'm
right. Look
done.
at
I'm
that.
2309. That's my number. All right,
Thanks
Sam.
for helping us protect the children, John.
Sam, we love you. You're awesome. You're courageous. And will you please come back to Mormon Stories? I actually think you should start a podcast. I think you'd be a wonderful podcast host. So if my listeners agree, please please write us and let us know that you want Sam to be his own podcaster, because the Open Stories Foundation just might support it.
Yeah, well, who knows?
And shout out to our friend Jamie Handis Handy, who just joined us. We're always grateful when
Well,
Jamie.
you know, John, as we were leading up to this, I was thinking, where is Jamie? She gave me so much comfort the first go around. Where is she? I need her.
Yeah, Jamie, you thought she had forsaken you, but the truth is she's standing by your side, Sam, along with lots of other
Thanks,
people.
Jamie.
All right, brother. You're awesome.
Thanks, John.
Thanks to everyone who's tuned in. Again, the website is protectldschildren.org. We love you guys. Keep up the good work. And thanks for everyone who supports Mormon Stories. MormonStories.org. Your donations make this type of programming possible. And keep supporting the Open Stories Foundation and any cause that's worthwhile. Sam, some are asking, can they give you money? Do you want people's money?
No.
No money.
Here's what none of this has anything to do with money. What I'm interested in is people standing up for our children. So rather than do money, just share the petition. Share what we're trying to do. If you can. If you're in a position to, some people are probably in a better position to give money than to be open about things, which is such a shame. But no.
All right. Everyone, thank you for joining us. You guys take care. Sam Young, you're awesome. Let's end this barbaric, shaming, medieval or worse practice. Let's not have people's worth evaluatable by a bishop or a stake president. Let's end worthiness interviews. Let's train bishops if they're going to be offering pastoral care. Let's train them in the fundamentals of mental health and of psychology and of speaking about sexuality. Let's get women in the clergy, but most importantly, let's allow people's spirituality, their relationships with the divine, to be between them and their creators. Let's get bishops and stake presidents no longer asking people about sexual positions and penetration and anal versus oral and all the different disgusting ways that this plays out by mostly well-meaning and then some just not well individuals. Sam Young, let's make this possible. Thanks for all your work.
Thank you, John.
All right, everybody, you guys take care and tune into Mormon Stories for more good stuff in the future.